And welcome back to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about how to build up your kids. Before we left on the break, we were talking about speaking to your kids as if they were already a 10, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you got to see them as a 10 and speak into that. And
so they can rise up.
Yeah, so they can go. So here's an example. When you start, let's say you start working out and you want to get stronger or you want to get healthier. If your coach, starts to work out with you and keeps you at that certain level, at a level 3, and you're now, knocking out all the different expectations that he has, and you're, hitting all the marks. If he doesn't raise the bar, then you're just going to stay at that level, and you're going to be thinking that you're getting work done. You're going to think that you're growing. You're going to think that you're going to be really going, oh, this is easy. So what you have to start doing is you have to start seeing them as a 3, as a 7, as a 9. You have to speak into that. You got to talk about where you hold them. And so it starts with you seeing your kids as confident, powerful, compassionate people, and speak into that as though they're already like that. And what will happen is, as they're hearing you talk, there's a part of them that recognizes, I'm not that yet, but I want to be that. That inspires me, that my mom is seeing that I'm and holding me accountable to being at that level. Right.
I remember growing up, and I had a lot of responsibility compared to my brother and sister, but I didn't want to disappoint you guys, and I also knew that I could do it, even though it was just me doing it, or even though my older brother didn't have to do it. Let's say it was chores or something. I still had that responsibility, and as much as I didn't like doing the dishes, I had a lot of, I guess it was exciting that my mom or my dad thought that I could do this. Does that make sense?
It does. But I want to point out that you didn't just come to that conclusion on your own, because I remember you had a lot of resentment. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of anger and resentment, and you kept saying, like, why? It's not fair, Dad. How come I have to? And so what I kept you focused on was, don't worry about everyone else. Worry about you. And I kept saying that and I remember this specifically, I always used to tell you, you're different than them. There's something special about you. And when I hand you stuff, you handle it. And I had to keep reminding you that that's the great quality about you. I had to keep saying, you're the only one that I can trust, where I hand you something and you just handle it, and I can blindly turn my back and know it's taken care of. And when I kept reminding you and speaking to that, it was almost like your eyes, there was this gleam in your eyes, like, really, I'm that for you? And I was like, yes. So I had to keep focusing you on just worry about Jasmine. And I remember saying, let's say you were 12. I remember saying, when you guys become 20 or 30 years old, and while they're struggling, you're going to have already had those breakthroughs. As 15 or 16 years old, you're going to be light years ahead of them. And I think that's what riled you up. That's what got you fired up, is because you were like, okay, I can see that. So I had to speak into your greatness. I had to speak into your future, and I had to paint this picture of who you were going to be. It had you just focus on what was in front of you and the breakthrough that you needed to have for yourself, and stop worrying about everyone else. Stop living in the this ain't fair and go into that whole victimization, but choose to get excited that, hey, my dad trusts me, or hey, when my dad asks me to do something, it's an opportunity for me to be there for him, and that I'm going to have these, and trust that I'm going to grow and have these breakthroughs, and that it's all about me. You got to find your own value in those moments.
But also it took a long time. It took years of you telling me that, or one moment for me to realize or decide, now after all these years, you were right.
I don't think it was one moment. I think it was pivotal moments, and it came week after week, month after month, year after year of, some of those tantrums and like, Dad, this isn't fair, and the back and forth. And I had to keep reminding you, hey, this is who you are. This is going to be an opportunity for you to learn. So you're going to, and I had to keep painting that picture of, look, I already know that if I'm offering them the same thing and they're not taking it, that's going to be, that's going to be an opportunity that they're going to miss out. But because you're taking it, whether you're doing it kicking and screaming, you're going to get the growth process from it. And you were the only one that rose up to it, even though some kicking and screaming on the front end. On the back end, I'm sure now you look back and go, I'm so glad you were, painting that picture for me so that I can get over that hump.
I am very grateful that I had that realization, or you had given me that, because I could still, even 10 years from now, be 30 years old and still resenting that I had to do so much.
That's right. That's right.
Up.
And I know that you're not a victim. I know that in the ability to be a victim, that you can choose to see it from a powerful, responsible place and find the gratitude in it to say, you know what, I'm glad I had those opportunities and that I was kind of pushed and nudged to break through those, because now there are some behavior patterns and there's some habits, some good habits that I've developed, and now I get to teach those to my kids, and I get to be that example for my kids and for my family. And had I not pointed that out or painted that picture for you, like you said, you would be that 30-year-old victim still operating from, my childhood wasn't fair. I always had to do this, or I always had to do that. Instead of, no, I got to do that. I got to contribute. My dad didn't give me that out. He kept, instilling in me that I get to be a contribution. And I'm glad that happened, because now I get to teach that to my kids when they're young is, hey, we're a team. We all get to contribute around here. And, your job is, doing the dishes or vacuuming, or by that point, maybe you sit down and you learn how to sit down with your family and your kids and let them pick. Hey, who wants to go? Or you play games, right? You have to learn how to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, as a kid, I think it's kind of exciting to, be given a job or pick a job. I remember my little cousin was like 4 maybe, and he would take the trash out from the bathrooms and he would throw them in the trash and he would get a piece of gum. So by year 2 of him doing this, he'd take the trash out and he'd go up to my grandpa with just his hand out waiting for the gum. And it was so cute. A little 6-year-old this was his job for 2 years, was to throw the bathroom trash away. Right. And he would just come with his little hand out. Yeah. And I saw him excited about that. And now he is 15 years old and he takes normal trash out. No one has to ask him. He doesn't get a reward.
Sometimes he visits, right? He'll visit on a weekend and he just will take the trash out, and it's like, and we have to catch ourselves in that conscious moment and say, hey, thank you for doing that. I appreciate you. Because that's how you build people up. And that's another thing that I wrote down, is to acknowledge your kids. If you want to help build them up, you have to acknowledge them. But don't just acknowledge them just to acknowledge them. What does that mean? Meaning, like, your acknowledgement has to be authentic. Like, find something good to acknowledge them for, something that you saw that took effort, something that you saw that was beneficial to them and their growth process, something that you noticed, and then you come over and go, hey, I noticed yesterday, you walked outside. I was just peeking out in the front of the house and looking, and as you're getting to your car, I saw you pick up a few pieces of trash and then take them over the dumpster. And you totally didn't have to do that. You could have just walked right by it. And that says a lot about your character, and I appreciate you doing that. People love being acknowledged when they think no one's watching. That acknowledgement there will light somebody up and now inspire them to want to continue to do great things when nobody's looking. Those are those golden moments that you have to be conscious and present and be noticing those things, and then taking a little mental note going, when my son gets back, I'm going to acknowledge him for that. Or when my daughter did this, like when you guys would come home and all of a sudden dishes are washed and things are put away, I'm like, and you probably heard me go, who did the dishes? And it's like, I did, Dad. Hey, thank you so much. It's kind of like, when you notice somebody's doing something extra, you want to acknowledge them for that, because they didn't have to do that, and it takes an awareness, a higher level awareness and a consciousness to be able to see that and then to follow up with an acknowledgement.
But there are some parents who think or believe that their kids should be doing those things, and therefore they don't acknowledge. Or, we come home, do the dishes, and then you or mom comes home and says, oh, you guys did the dishes, that's great. Why didn't you clean the microwave? And it's like,
well, that comes from nothing ever being enough. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, you did great, but right? Like I heard the story about Oscar De La Hoya, which was one of at his time was the best boxers in the world. But he always, when he would come home, he would ask his dad, to review film with him, and they'd sit down. And he said, one of the things that made me great was that my dad never acknowledged me. He always, when we watch a fight, he would say, hey, you did good, son, but you could have did better. And in one crazy way, it made him strive to be great, but in a dysfunctional way, he never got the, hey, attaboy, I'm proud of you. So there's a price to pay on both ends.
I think you can actually have both in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
I think if, for instance, you didn't get the part in a play. I'm a kid, I didn't get the part in a play, and I come to you, you would say, a good job anyways, you did great. What can we do now? Now, what part did you get? Let's work on making this one great.
Yeah, or I like to tell my clients, let's look at what worked, what didn't work. And let's start with first what worked, because that fires you up.
But first you acknowledge them for trying.
Their effort.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you. You took the shot. It's not about whether you made it or not. It was I'm acknowledging that you had the courage to dig down deep and take that shot.
Right.
So now let's look at what worked, what didn't work. What worked was that you gave yourself permission to take responsibility for it and then take the risk. And then what didn't work was, and then you start looking and giving some of that critique. Before we end the show, I want to get to a couple other things that I really want to land. And one of the distinctions is that when kids are making mistakes, you got to refrain from any reactionary responses. I like to say sometimes giving a kid a hug when they make a mistake is 10 times more powerful than any words that come out of your mouth. It's okay to just not say anything and then just say, come here, let me give you a hug. Or you don't even got to say that. Just walk up and hug them and let that moment of silence, let it be powerful for them. When your kid is already beating themselves up because they fell short or didn't accomplish what they did, just you walking up to them and giving them a hug, you might notice that they will break out in some emotion. They'll just start crying, and it could be a happy cry. It could be a good,
right, it could be
healing,
something they needed.
It's a healing cry because it's like they're beating themselves up and you just came and wrapped your arms around them, and it was just like that hug was a statement that it's okay, son. It's okay, my daughter. I'm here for you. And no matter what, I'm always going to be here for you. So a hug, instead of some kind of reaction response when kids fail or fall short, is way more powerful than anything that you got to say. Adding loving, compassionate, and effective ways of being instead of some kind of verbal response or some kind of advice could be very healing and could be like a comfort energy that could make the world of difference. Also, I'd like to talk about how another way to build up your kids is to offer them opportunities to help you, even if you don't need it. One of the greatest stories ever heard was a mentor of mine. He's in his 50s, and his dad, when he was younger, taught him how to be really good in the real estate investing business. So his dad finally retired, and he became kind of like the man in the family and in that business, is really good at it. And he started noticing his dad would mope around and was just kind of feeling like, depressed. And he would purposely go over to his dad's house and say, hey, Dad, I got this project, this one house, and I don't know how to fix it. Can you help me? And when he brought that to his dad, he got his 80-year-old man sitting there and his face lit up. And he's like, yeah, son, this is what you got to do and that what you got to do. And he just got the biggest kick out of watching his dad just light up. And he wanted to be a contribution to his dad. And it told me what a beautiful, confident, competent human being that he must be to offer his dad this opportunity to contribute, even though he didn't need it. Does that make sense?
Right. A lot of people would have that pride in the way, I don't need my dad's help.
That's right. And so, but as a parent, what would it be like if you involved your kids and said, hey, you know what, I'm stuck on this project at work. I don't know how to do it. Maybe I need some kid insight. Why don't you come and give me some feedback or come help me with this? Really, Dad? Like you want to invite your kids to participate. And even if you don't need the help, ask them for help anyways. Like start practicing involving them and reaching out to them and saying, hey, I want your opinion because your opinion matters. Or, hey, I was thinking of making this decision. What do you think? You have to be willing to invite them to come and participate so they can realize that, out of their own mouth, hearing them say something powerful and then watching you light up and go, hey, that's a great idea. I never thought about that. And then in that moment, they come to the conclusion that, wow, my voice is important. what I have to say does matter. And so then they start to create some significance. They start to realize that they are important. They do matter. And that's how you build kids up.
It's funny because I'm hearing you say all these little tactics that, you do. And I'm like, hey, you know what? He did that to me the other day. So like, for instance, sometimes you write articles or, have stuff going on here at the station or with your own radio station, but you'll ask me, to write an article or help you read over something for your book. And I'll, maybe roll my eyes like, oh, okay, I'll help you. Like it's such a big hassle, but secretly I'm like, wow, Dad thinks I'm so smart. Like I can do this. I can write this article. Let me take a crack at it or whatever. But it's little things like that at first we're probably going to act like we don't want to help or act like it's such a burden for us to do it. But that's just how we are as kids, I think, because secretly it's not a secret anymore because I'm telling you, but I really love that you asked me to contribute.
Well, the cool thing about that is if I start off trying to trick you like that, like I don't really need it, and then I involve you, when you actually get involved, I go, wow, I really do need this. That's the cool thing about it. Just like the show, like you think, you're on the show hosting the show. I mean, I don't need you to host, but I invited you to host to invite you to be a part of something greater than yourself. And now all of a sudden I go, what a genius move. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, even though I'm playing that, but afterwards I'm realizing, no, she does have something special. And so I get more clarity. I'm even shocking myself in that. And there's a whole nother process inside of that you'll realize that will open up and grow when you start practicing some of those things. But the trick is, as a parent, you need to start involving your kids more. You got to engage more. And that takes an awareness. You got to really be present. It has to be your commitment. And I know you've heard me say this before. You gotta tighten up your game as a parent and spend less time focusing on the distractions like the Facebook and people asking you to do stuff. And you gotta really kind of tighten up your game and go, no, my kids are important. They matter. And it has to be almost like your parenting ability has to mimic your business mindset. Even if you don't have a business, if I was running a business, a multi-billion-dollar business, how would I operate? How would I show up? And you have to take your parenting commitment to that level with a game plan, all that kind of stuff. You got to really be serious and committed, consciously and focused on how do I build my kids up so that they can be powerful, confident, compassionate human beings that are being a contribution in society. That they're not out there, raising havoc or getting arrested or getting in trouble. Well, I'm not saying your kids can't make mistakes, because they're going to do that and try to figure out on their own journey. But what I'm saying is that you're setting them up to win and you're making a conscious effort rather than just saying, well, now she's 18, she's on her own. I mean, how empowering are you as a father to just say you're on your own now? I mean, that's a total disempowering conversation to have.
Also, one thing we probably haven't touched on yet, we might have, but we talk about this all the time, is being the example, doing or being, and your kids are going to follow right behind it. Almost exactly.
That's right.
And it's kind of just like weird to think that this little kid is just watching you and they're doing what you're doing and they're being who you're being.
They are little mini me's. They're observing everything you do. And they're also watching what you're saying, and then they're watching what you're doing. And if it's not matching or anywhere close to it,
they're going to do what you do.
Yes, but they're also deciding you're a hypocrite. And once you're labeled a hypocrite, you lost the power of influence. They are no longer being influenced by you. They're being influenced by outward circumstances, and normally that's their knucklehead friends or people that are giving them the wrong advice, which is contradictory to what you say you want in your family life.
Exactly. Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. If you're just joining us, we were talking about building up your kids. We're going to go over a quick recap.
Yeah, what you missed was listening versus hearing, the distinction between the both.
Questioning your kids to help solve problems.
Explaining why and not just because I said so.
Reinventing yourselves to hook your kid's ear.
Asking open-ended questions.
Teaching your kids how to make their own decisions.
Making your children their own leader rather than following you.
Your kids are not broken. Stop treating them like they are.
See your kids as amazing.
build your kids up, talk to them, and show them that they're special.
Talk about what worked, what didn't work.
Offer opportunities to help.
Refrain from instant reactions, and then tighten up your parent game. If you missed any one of those, you should go back and check the podcast on your hometown station, KHTS.
So next week, we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about effective ways to communicate with your kids.
Yeah, I want to open up a discussion about, pointing out how do you talk to your kids in a way that they really listen to you, and it might be just a matter of shifting a few words. Articulating your words in a certain way that when they hear it like you're on their side, rather than hearing what you have to say as though they're bad and wrong. And all it is a few tweaks. When I teach some of my clients how to speak and articulate themselves in a powerful way, quite often I'll get them to call me and say, oh my God, my kid is responding like a 90-degree turnaround. And it's usually just, it's amazing how we're not aware of the words we use. I know you've seen this before in some of the workshops where, people will come up and share and they'll start saying, this was very difficult or this was hard. And I got to stop them and say, it's not difficult or hard as much as it could be challenging. And if you change some of the words, like this is difficult or hard, and you start inserting the word challenging implies that it's a roadblock, but you still have the ability to figure out how to get through it and have a breakthrough in it. When it's difficult or hard, that's implying that there's no way that you can ever have the outcome that you're looking for.
Right. We kind of talk about, I think every show, we kind of go over language and how it's important, and there's a difference between certain words. And this is something that's new to me, and I think it's great because I didn't realize what it was doing. And now that I'm getting older and I'm meeting people, through school or work or anywhere, I can tell a lot by a person just by the way that they speak to me.
Exactly.
And I love that. I love that I can just weed out the people that I know I want to be friends with and the people that I know that maybe I don't.
Language is everything. The way that you speak tells a lot about the level of consciousness you're at. For example, if you're always using the certain words, that implies that you're operating from the victim perspective versus the responsible perspective. That there alone puts you in a category that you're okay. The way that this person speaks and the words that they use implies that they're powerless. And then certain people, when they speak, you're all like, you get goosebumps. Like, man, I want to hang around that person, because when they speak, they're speaking as though they can manifest new results. That they're not tagged by certain things and they're not limited.
Exactly. We'll talk about it next week. Thank you for joining us today on My Conscious Dad with me, Jasmine Urbina, and my dad, Alex Urbina. We're here every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. right here on your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS.